All right. Thank you for coming this morning. I know we had fun last night. Since you're here, either you really wanted to be here or you didn't go out last night, so thank you. Also, on the prizes, I muled those over from the States. And so I really, really hope we get to give away all of them. There's 2 Echoes, there's a little dash, you know what the dash buttons are from Amazon? It's like an IoT device, but they're completely blank and you can code your own whatever you want to do. And then I've got a couple of USB sticks that have encryption right on it. You can put in your own password. So some good stuff. And then we know we have Giannis had brought some books as well. So thanks for the intro. I'm Nick. I've been at iOLAP for about 13 years. I am our global AWS Alliance Lead. That sounds really fancy. That just means I have the most seniority with AWS. I am a solutions architect. I'm deep in the weeds. We can talk technology all day long. I'm a developer, but not as good as some of you. Before iOLAP, I worked for a little company called Accenture. You may have heard of them, but really happy to be at iOLAP. I've been through, we started off, I think I was employee number 15, and we're at 170 or so. So it's been a fun journey. At home, I live in Dallas, Texas. I won't make the same joke I made yesterday. I'm not a typical Texan. Max is my son. He's 8 years old. My wife, Jennifer. Max loves baseball. We're a big baseball family. He also likes basketball, but right now it's baseball season. So, education. I went to the University of North Texas. I studied music. I was a jazz studies major, a music education major. Then I figured out I wanted to make money, and I changed my major. So I got a degree in IT, do a kind of a degree between management and coding. So one of those in between. I want to talk more about that later as well. For fun, I love sports, I love cars, I work on my own cars, I love music, and I don't know if that's a word, but geekery. I like geek stuff. All right, so some of my recent AWS projects. What I want to do today is I want to talk to you just basic advice. I've had a lot of experience in AWS and you know, good, the bad, and I want to give you some advice, both for if you're a developer, if you're an executive. There's some lessons learned. It's not going to be technical advice. It's just advice as you go and approach your cloud journey. So a couple of my projects, Dickey's Barbecue, you heard from Laura yesterday. Taco Bell, we're doing some really fun stuff with them. Do you guys know what Grubhub is? It's a brand you probably haven't heard of, but you have the concept here. It's where you order from a mobile app, and then somebody else, a third-party delivery service, goes to the restaurant, and then they bring you the food. Grubhub is Taco Bell's partner for third-party delivery, and we built all the middleware. It all runs on AWS, so taking the menu information, taking store hours, pricing, inventory levels, making sure that the communications between Grubhub and Taco Bell are accurate. So it's a fun project. Shaw is a Canadian communications cable TV company. We do a lot of streaming data off their set-top boxes, looking at button presses on remotes, downloads of movies. We can tell a lot about people's watching habits from the data streaming through Kinesis with Shaw. iRobot, vacuum cleaner company, huge data. All the IoT data coming off of that stuff. Actually, in our office in Rijeka, we've got a couple of robots as our test robots. So we've got a team here that works on that project. RSI just did a big migration. We went from Netezza on-prem to Redshift in the cloud. Alchemy is a bank. They're like a white label banking software startup. PRMC, I don't know what they do. One of you guys probably has worked on the project. I think Eddie has. DFW and Houston airports. This has been a fun project. We take live streaming FAA data, Federal Aviation Administration. So the black boxes inside of aircraft, we get all the data off of those in real time. So knowing what is altitude, what is speed, what's the GPS coordinates, and we stream all that through AWS into Kinesis. We built a data lake. We do analytics on top of it. All right, so I like this screen here. This is the scary part about what we do and what you guys have to do. This side over there on your left side, that's what, if you logged into AWS, that's what the management console looked like 1 year ago. You clicked on the button, it said services. There's about 80 services there. This is as of last week. I think we went from from 80 to 130. That's kind of scary. If you're new to AWS and you click there, and you're like, where do I even begin? The good news is you don't have to master all this stuff, and I'm going to talk about that. I probably play in 15 of these services out of the 130 that you see over here. We talked a lot yesterday, the last couple of days, about building the right team, having a team mitosis and things like that. You're not expected to learn all this stuff, so don't let this scare you. Okay, so first I want to start with advice for our practitioners, for our developers, our IT professionals. All right, I'm going to start with a very esoteric topic, but I think it's helped me shape my career, and I hope it's some good advice for you guys. So, anybody know who Peter Thiel is? PayPal founder? Okay. So, 0 to 1 is a book. I highly recommend you read 0 to 1. He talks about having a plan for the future. If you're going to invent something, make sure it's 10 times better than anybody else. You either need to be first to the market or you need to be 10 times better than everybody else. But he has this concept of the future, and I love this quote: if you treat the future as something definite, it makes sense to understand it in advance and to work to shape it. But if you expect an indefinite future ruled by randomness, you'll give up on trying to master it. So that's what I kind of think about in that previous slide. Without a plan, you're not going to master your future. And so the way Peter organizes it, he says optimism and pessimism is your future, and then he talks about determinate or indeterminate. So you can kind of create this matrix, and we can get into some really fun discussions about cultures and what people believe and where they fall on this mix, but I want to tell you where I fall. And so I believe my future is fantastic. I've believed that my whole life. It's going to be great. So I'm optimistic. But I don't feel like I had a great vision up until about 5 or 6 years ago. So I feel like, at least in my culture in the United States, we are told from a very young age that you should be doing extracurricular activities, and you should be not putting all your eggs in one basket, and you should be learning all of these different things because your future, we don't know what it's going to hold, but you want to be great at it. So it's a good message, but it also it makes us more in a services industry. It makes us more like lawyers and service providers rather than actually having a product or an invention, which is different than what we used to be. If you think about the United States post World War II, we knew that manufacturing was our future, and that's what led us to what we became. So I'm sorry to get a little esoteric there, but I wanted to kind of set the stage about, or at least have you guys start thinking about, do you believe your future is great, and then do you want to create a plan to get there? I hope that's the case, because I want to help you as practitioners define that plan. So, what are you passionate about? How do you define it? How do we start taking that massive list of 130 things to specialize in? I can tell you, you just need to define it. Somebody once told me, the key to happiness is finding something that makes you happy and passionate about, and then finding a way to make money doing it. So if you're a front-end guy, you're not going to be happy doing back-end. If you're a sysadmin, you're not going to be happy doing anything. I'm sorry, I'm kidding. So define what makes you happy, right? What is your passion area of focus there? AWS is chunked up into multiple areas to focus on these different things, lots of tools. And then, really important, where is the market going? I could make jokes about COBOL and Fortran and all of these old languages. My first language was COBOL. So luckily, when I was in school, we didn't have real mainframes. It was mainframe emulators. My upperclassmen would walk around with their stack traces, dumps of reams of paper to go track down a bug. So at least we had emulators. But I hope that COBOL's not your passion. Right, so, but where's the market going? It's not COBOL, right? You've heard this week, microservices, serverless, containers, definitely, for sure. So how do you take your passion for front end or back end and juxtapose that with microservices? Security is big. I go to reInvent every year. It's been absolutely insane to see the 1 or 2 security. Just go walk the expo floor and the sponsors. And you see 1 or 2 the first year, 5 or 6 the second year, hundreds the third year and on. So security is absolutely huge. There's lots of consulting partners, technology partners out there. That's my barometer for what's hot in the industry. Just go walk the expo floor and see where the vendors are. AI and machine learning, for sure. That's one of AWS's core pillars. Most of their new services are centered around that, SageMaker, things like that. So if you like data science, even if you don't like data science, they make it easy. You can take a data set, pop it into machine learning, see some really cool decision trees, experiment, fail fast. But that's the market, definitely AI, machine learning is going there, and big data, of course. That's what we've been doing the last 20 years. So does that make sense? What are you passionate about? Marry that up with where the market is going. You should have a very long career. And you should be happy. And this thing is maybe working. Okay. The other piece of advice that I would say is you want to innovate without requirements. Too many times we as developers, we sit back and we wait for somebody to tell us exactly what they want. Let's write it down. I'm glad that Agile is starting to take off and we can start to thin slice some of these requirements and stories. But you as developers and practitioners, you are better than that. You can anticipate a user's needs. You can put yourself in that user's shoes. You don't have to necessarily be an expert in the user's experience, but you can do other things. So let's think about where you might play. One might be custom apps, okay? So how can you innovate at your company without somebody telling you exactly what to do? So I'd suggest a couple things. One, serverless. Oh gosh, we're beating you up about serverless. Learn Lambda, learn API Gateway, learn Cognito. Take all of your apps that you were writing in some type of LAMP server and try and write it into a serverless architecture. Cloud9, anybody know what Cloud9 is? Great, good. Cloud9, my favorite thing, man. When I used to do Python development, I hated maintaining my own local Python environment. I hated deploying code to Lambda. I hated trying to work with Git and getting all of that configured. I'm not a DevOps guy, so forgive me if I butcher some of the words here or processes, but I would do some things for myself and hated it. Cloud9, fantastic. A great IDE, seamless integration with AWS. You can be that leader in your organization to work through Cloud9, and it's super cheap. I think they used to charge for the software usage. I think that it's, I don't know, a single developer might cost you $2 a month depending on your usage or how long that box is online. So really check out Cloud9. Testing automation, deployment automation, these things as you're building your custom apps. I mean, we've been doing Ant for a long time in the Java world, and we've been doing a lot of things with automation, but it just becomes so much easier in the cloud. So let's make sure that if you're building a custom app, you're thinking through how do I automate as much as I can. If you work with package software, let's say that you install SharePoint. Most people also think about Office 365 and things like that, but if you're still installing SharePoint or a project server, or if you're installing some type of BI tool or ETL tool, where you're installing that on an EC2 instance or a virtual machine, there's ways you can also innovate. I would say that you can implement auto-scaling and elastic load balancing, things you would have never done before. You can do with a click of a button. Anybody know, has anybody done an auto-scaling group or elastic load balancer? Couple? Great. So I'll explain what that is that you can take an EC2 instance and then you can easily put a software-based load balancer in front of it that AWS provides. And they've got a classic load balancer, an application-level load balancer, lots of options in there. But then also an auto-scaling group is fantastic, especially for distributed workloads. You get an EC2 instance. Really, the way I use it for HA. I don't have a lot of, packaged software sometimes isn't really compatible with multiple nodes, and it's a lot of work to get that packaged software to recognize the nodes that you're adding on demand. So I would use an auto-scaling group as more of an HA approach. So it has a health check, essentially. Auto-scaling group says EC2 instance has gone down, fantastic. I'm going to go spin up another EC2 instance with this AMI. So those are ways that you can innovate. Somebody asks you to install some software on a machine, you can do a lot more than just install the software. Backups, it's all very simple now. CloudWatch integrations, they make that dead simple. Making sure you're taking all of your logging from your packaged application, pushing that into CloudWatch. Very easy way to innovate there. Bootstrapping is a lot of fun. I think a lot lately about HA and DR. And how do I take a very raw Linux image that Amazon might provide to me, or a very raw Windows image, and how do I bootstrap the installation of this packaged software? And so what that means is I'm going to go put that software in S3, and then I'm going to run a script after that machine boots up to go install that software, do all the configurations, make everything as automated as possible. So that's another way to innovate. If you're in big data analytics, the biggest thing that we see is retaining, I call it retaining the lake. We all have massive amounts of data in our organizations. A lot of times when we get into these workflows, we take the data, we mash it into a database, and then we delete the raw data because we're trying to save space. With the cloud S3, with Glacier, super cheap to retain the lake. And then Amazon's been nice enough to give us some additional tools like Athena, which is kind of like it's like having Hadoop without having Hadoop. You're essentially given an ODBC, JDBC driver to go query data against your S3 environment. Fantastic. I might talk about a use case that Nicola implemented to save a customer about $30,000 a month using Athena. Serverless integration, we did that at Houston airports. So old world, we would take an EC2 instance, we would go grab maybe SQL Server integration services, we might grab Informatica or DataStage or I don't know, Talent, and that would be our ETL tool. Now, we have data flow into somewhere, likely S3, triggers something with a Lambda function, we then run that through step functions to go do all this ETL processing, and it usually, I mean, we can do it consumption-based, I don't know, we'd have to look at it, but most of these ETL jobs are going to cost less than 5 cents every time they run, which is incredible considering you're going to spend $20,000 a year on a Talent license. And so there's things we have to balance, right? You got to be a Python developer to use serverless integration. You need to understand how step functions work. Maybe maintenance is a little bit different, but it's certainly something to consider and a different way for you to innovate. If you're an admin, security, fantastic. I'm sorry I made a joke earlier. You can automate the hell out of your environment, and that's what I'd recommend how you would innovate. Chaos Monkey, does anybody know what Chaos Monkey is? Awesome, you're getting it. If you don't, go check out Netflix. This is an invention by Netflix. It's a very cruel invention. What it does is it deploys into a production environment and tries to create chaos in your production environment by terminating instances, deleting things. So it's almost like the gamification between the developers and the system administrators. The developers know the system administrators are going to unleash Chaos Monkey into their environment, and so they have to make and design their applications and their infrastructure in a very robust way. So experiment with that, sysadmins, you'll have a lot of fun. Consider workspaces. These are Amazon workspaces. We've adopted them. We no longer have to buy the most expensive MacBook Pros, sorry guys, but we can deploy these Amazon workspaces out there as development environments, right? They're full desktop environments that run in the cloud, get you close to the data. When in the past, sometimes some of the workloads we work on require a very constant connection, and it might be bad if we're running a big SQL statement over ODBC or JDBC and to have that break midstream because we're far from the data center. Workspaces it's basically in the same subnet, very close to your environment. So these are different ways. Nobody has to ask you to do these things. So you can innovate, you can establish best practices as you're migrating to the cloud. Some other ideas. So if you are a developer, you're a practitioner, we talked about, I think yesterday, finding your first workload. Well, sometimes that takes a little bit of time. If you're keen on this right now, go innovate right now. These are things you can do right now. Go spin up a free account in AWS. I might have a few credit codes lying around if you want to spend a little bit more money than the free account. Come talk to me. But things you can do on your own, they're a lot of fun. Alexa skill. I told you I love baseball. Walk-up music. So sometimes in baseball, as the batter's coming up to bat, they'll play, Beyonce, whatever they're going to play. But I built my own Alexa skill that plays walk-up music. So I can say, Alexa, play walk-up music for Daniel, and it'll play Daniel's song. Play walk-up music for Nicola. It plays Beyonce for sure. Other things. There's these third-party partners. Park My Cloud, Cloudability. I recommend them highly. But if you're a developer, Go try and recreate what they've done. Just go research them. All they're doing is taking, Park My Cloud is a tool that will go out there and look at your usage. It'll look at when was an instance spun up, and if you're getting you have some rules around things have to be shut down at a certain time. Park My Cloud does that for you. You can write that very easily. So I'd recommend figure out how that's built and build it yourself. Cloudability takes the detailed AWS building information and provides analytics on top of it. You as a developer, you're sitting at home, have fun, go recreate those two things. They're not that complicated. If you run a WordPress site, just migrate it. Go through the experience. If you run your own personal blog, just do it. It's fun. A reminder app. That would be a great way to do something as serverless. You can experiment with some of the mobile functionality as well. You can make that an Alexa skill. Infrastructure automation scripts, these are fantastic. We can take entire environments. So let's say we've built a dev environment and we're about to transition to our test phase. I can go spin up that same dev environment with a script just like that. And when I'm done with test, I can destroy it. So automate something with infrastructure, scripting. Bootstraps we talked about. ROI, TCO exercises. I'm a bit of a numbers geek, so these are fun for me. You might not find them fun, but I would say go look at what applications you have in your organization. Go look at what hardware you have, and just go do a Google search for TCO, AWS TCO, and it's a really great tool, and will tell you in a 3-year ROI basically how much you're going to spend on-prem for that infrastructure versus in the cloud. I don't like to normally lead with cost because it's not the number one value prop, but it is a fun exercise to start comparing on-prem to cloud. And then just a simple calculator, learn how to use that. Who's at my door? This is a fun one. Amazon released a skill called Recognize. So there's also the deep lens. So you can even take a cheap camera, put a camera at your door, and when your doorbell rings, maybe use that dash button. Doorbell rings, takes a picture of that person, sends it to Recognize, runs it through facial recognition, and then you can ask Alexa who's at my door because it's compared it to your database of friends. So this fun little simple app, you can run it, build it at home. I bet somebody's built something on GitHub already that you could borrow. Use a workspace, serverless CSV file ingestion, a dash button. So these are just ideas outside of your company that you can do, take home and just learn AWS in a different way. I'd recommend that. Okay, executives. We've beat you up about this a lot, but cost. To me, these are the pillars of when you're building your business case, what you want to focus on. So cost, yes, it's there. You can trade CapEx for OpEx. You heard Laura talk about that. You can get started for nothing. Economies of scale, pay for what you use. I will caution you, I mentioned Nickel a minute ago in the iRobot use case. As part of their big data infrastructure, they had a DynamoDB instance that was taking a whole lot of data off some robots. And there was a customer service web application that needed to query this data. Customer calls in and they've got a problem with their robot, and the customer service rep needs to be able to look at the mission history, right? When was the last time it cleaned a floor? How many square feet did it? What error codes are there? So they needed access to an environment. And this is millions of robots and terabytes and terabytes of data every single day. DynamoDB was the solution that we inherited from somebody else to answer those questions. The issue, DynamoDB, we had to configure with so much IOPS that our cost on DynamoDB was about $15,000 per month per environment, and we had 2 environments. And so very quickly realized DynamoDB is not the right use case. It's a fantastic tool. We use it all over the place, but it's not right for that. So we re-architected that. We took $30,000 a month across their environments down to $500 a month just using simple serverless data integration with a data lake with Athena layered on top of that. So there's 100 ways to solve every problem. If you're an executive, realize that. You can spend a lot of money if you're not careful and you don't put the controls in place. Elasticity, it's very important. I talked about auto-scaling. You don't need to over-provision. I think that was important in Laura's discussion yesterday for her to get started with an on-prem device. So Redshift is the data warehousing environment, right? Redshift, fantastic service. For her to get started on-prem, it would probably be minimum $500,000 investment for an Opatija box. It cost us $36 the first month, right? And I think they spend about, on their data warehouse environment, they probably spend $300 a month. So it's not that bad. But elasticity, you didn't need to over-provision from the beginning. We start small. And then as we look at usage, we harden the environment over time. We change instance types. We add nodes. Flexibility, I'll be interested in the discussion this afternoon later this morning when we start talking about cloud versus hybrid versus on-prem. AWS says any workload. So I think that's true, but maybe someone has a different opinion. We can do anything, I believe, in the cloud. You can go global in minutes. That's true for iRobot. There are some data sovereignty issues with China and some of their requirements on if my data touches somebody else's data, then me as a government, we have access to that data. So how do we take this architecture and chunk it up into pieces? So we're very easily, using scripting, take the environment, recreate it in a different region in Japan, get it close to the robots. So go global in minutes is very simple. Maybe you have a content delivery network. You can start to use edge locations for your content. It's very simple to go global. Experiment and innovate. Security implemented at every layer. Giannis talked about that yesterday. And you can obviously get the best of breed for certifications. AWS has a ton of them. You can leverage those and say that your infrastructure is also secure. So say no to data centers. Friends don't let friends build data centers. Roles, responsibilities, and people. I believe Alexander went through some of this. I want to just remind you, this is the right approach, I think, to building a team. One, you got to get your team to accept that you're moving to the cloud. You're going to have people that are going to offer roadblocks, present it as an opportunity to learn new skills. Have them go through training. Algebra, the partner, they're providing training courses. There's lots of training I can recommend online. Things like Udemy, Linux Academy, AWS itself has great training. Tech Data in the States at least provides training as well. So just invest in training for the team. But then you have to get experience. This isn't like other tools where you can go train and then just go study and probably pass a certification. You need hands-on experience here. So get something. Create a low-risk sandbox environment. Put some controls in place, but stay out of the way. Build your SWAT team. Alexander talked about this. The two pizza team, right? You got to have guys that know networking and databases and servers, cross-functional, but build that 8-person team. Bring in external experts. Bring in partners to help or augment or accelerate. Do a small migration. We talked yesterday about what are some of those types of things you might want to migrate. Mitosis. Split the team up. You got 8 people. Maybe you take 2 people off that team and create a new team, and then bring 6 new people in, let those 2 people train those 6 new people, replace the 2 people you took away from the original team, and keep repeating that process. That's how you get mitosis across your organization. Certification. If you're an executive, go do this yourself. Eat your own dog food. I did it. I think it's very possible. Learn this stuff. So when your team comes to you and says it's not possible, you can correct them, 1. But 2, you can validate estimations that they're going to give you. I think it's really important. Recognize and reward. Make a big deal when somebody on your team gets a certification. This is hard. It's hard to get these certifications. Make a big deal. Throw a party. Emails. Put their picture on the board. Whatever it is that your organization responds to. This is also how you generate excitement amongst the rest of the organization. And then create a unifying job family would probably be the last thing. Titles, career paths, they all shift a little bit in this new world. I can't tell you what that looks like in your organization, but at least identify it, that you may need to create some new job titles, some new job descriptions, and figure out how those things marry up between your on-prem world and your cloud world. Okay, overcoming objections. So these are the things I hear a lot when people say, no, I don't want to move to the cloud. So you're an executive, we've got you fired up. You're going back to your organization, executive or middle manager, you want to go to your CEO and say, we're moving to the cloud. These are some of the things you can expect that the CEO might say to you, or somebody on your team might say to you. And so I want to give you ways for you to overcome these objectives. 1, cost and security. Oh gosh, security. I used to have security conversations all the time, not so much anymore. But there's tools out there. Cloudability is a great way to control costs. Park My Cloud, Cloud Checker. Giannis had this whole slide of AWS Marketplace security providers. Just check those out. Security, I like to tell people, I can drive up to your office and war drive in your parking lot easier than I can get into your cloud. So the cloud is by nature very, very secure unless somebody makes a mistake. And that's where you're going to use these tools to audit your environment and expose some of the things where you've made a mistake. Vendor lock-in, that's another one I hear. Guys, I'm an evangelist. I'm a huge fanboy. I love AWS. You hear me talk about serverless, but I hear people say sometimes, you know what? I don't want to get locked into AWS. I want to be able to take these applications that I'm building and move them back on-prem if I want to, or I want to move them to Azure. Great. Look at Docker, look at Kubernetes, containerize it using something other than the managed service that AWS provides. But AWS does provide containerization services to help make this easier. Governance, so there's some great tools out there. Fugue is one, Cloud Conformity. I think Terraform might help, but these are things that are going to go out and scan your environment and make sure that you have governance, whatever rules you've defined from a governance are flagged. So I really like Fugue. I'll talk about it more in a minute. Durability, more nines than you can achieve on your own. That's the other thing. Somebody says, oh, the cloud isn't durable. Are you kidding? Yes, the US East had an S3 issue where somebody clicked the wrong button, but guess what? Nobody's data was lost. The data was durably there and restored. So sometimes people say, I still don't trust it. Great, consider a multi-cloud backup. Consider a multi-account, multi-region backup. We've gotten into times where we create what we would call an escrow account. So multiple AWS accounts, you get your production account, have an escrow account, never share the sysadmins between those environments are different sysadmins. And then when you're building your environment number one, you can push data that's in a completely separate region into environment number two. Costs go up a little bit more storage costs, but you're never going to have that human being, disgruntled employee who goes out and terminates your environment because you get that backup in the escrow. You can also consider Azure Blob Storage, right? Maybe you want to back up your S3 environment to Azure. We see customers do that all the time. Too new. Are you kidding? Cloud is a 20-year-old term. It's been around forever. Public, private cloud, data centers. I don't see that as a valid argument, but we're using mostly tried and true technologies. These are things, that have been the bedrock of computer science, right? Linux, core networking. Nothing's new here. We're just repackaging it and making it easier to consume. And the other one, AWS has access to my data. I don't want to put my data up in the cloud. Oh gosh. 1, they don't need to. 2, they don't want to. And 3, they actually can't. I've called AWS before and said, I'm locked out of this box, I need your help. Sorry. They can't help. They don't have access to your data, but there's people that don't believe that. But why would they want access to your environment? They don't. So those are objections. You may run into those. I think that these are a little bit of valuable advice. All right, so a couple things. Tool recommendations. These are some things I've come across in my experience that I'd recommend. I already talked about a couple of these. So cost management, these are fun. AWS has great billing console, and you can look at your spend. But check some of these out as well. A lot of them have free trials. You can just you basically create a read-only IAM role, grant access to the third-party SaaS solution, and they go in and look at your usage and monitoring, and are going to provide some nice, pretty reports. But they're also going to make recommendations. They'll say, guess what? You've got an X4 whatever instance type, and you're only using 2% of that box. We've never seen it peak beyond that. We recommend you downsize that box. Or it'll say, we notice this box has been on all the time for the last however many months. We recommend a reserved instance. It's going to save you X amount of dollars per month. So they're great tools. We don't use them because our humans do this, our people, right? Our guys dig into the data, we understand it. But for at-a-glance reporting and needing to be able to check some of these things, I recommend these tools. Security and audit, I'm not an expert here, but there's definitely a lot of third-party SaaS solutions you can layer on top of your AWS environment. Cloudsploit, Evident.io, Threat Stack, Cloud Conformity I talked about. The other thing, there's a secret, those are things you have to pay for. In GitHub, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tools that do this stuff. You can go download it, spin it up on an EC2 instance. I bet there's some serverless out there. But it's going to assess your account and audit your account and provide you insights that you're not going to have as a human being. This is where I would recommend not relying on your humans, but letting the machine go scan your environment for these threats. All right, Fugue, Terraform, Ansible. These things are a lot of fun. So we know what CloudFormation is. Based off the hands that I saw earlier, probably half the room knows what CloudFormation is. But CloudFormation isn't everything. Sometimes it's trailing, it's lagging as new products are released. Sometimes it doesn't manage dependencies very well. So there's some third-party tools, Fugue, Terraform, Ansible, that do this. Fugue, go out to their website. There's this tool that you can download for free. I forget what it's called. It's not Conductor. You'll figure it out once you get there. It's a client tool you'll install on your laptop, give it access to your AWS environment, and it will go out and basically document and create a visual representation of your AWS environment down to the security group and ports and subnets. It also uses their markup language. And so the point is that you can go visually see what your AWS environment looks like. You can also use their service as a automation tool. So when people deploy things for real, what they do is they go out and they turn off console access for people, and they turn off CLI access for new infrastructure. And they'll use a tool like Fugue that if you want to make a change to your infrastructure, you code the change and you push the change using their Conductor product. So it'll go out and go make the changes for you. It allows you to do rollback just like CloudFormation. So really recommend, if you're into that type of thing, infrastructure automation, check out Fugue, check out Terraform. I think I'm getting close. Key takeaways. Okay, yeah. One more. Key takeaways. Practitioners, evolve your skill set while finding your passion. Sorry I got esoteric there, but I think it's important for you to really evaluate yourself and what you want to accomplish and figure out how does that marry up to AWS. Don't wait for the ask, anticipate and build forward. So those are some of the things. How do you innovate without getting the requirements? Build something, anything right now. Go home. If you win that dash button today, go home and build something. Send me an email. I want to know what you built. Read blogs. There's some really brilliant people out there. Read the blogs, read the white papers, go to AWS's blogs. You're going to learn a lot. Executives, I already said this, friends don't let friends build data centers. Stop buying servers. Shift your culture while you shift your technology. That's the map that we talked about. And then learn how to mitigate those concerns and provide solutions to objections. So you're going to hear them. You need to be a good leader and be able to either overrule people, which I don't recommend. I would recommend you try and get them to come along. Educate them and accept risk, but you want to make sure that you be able to make people comfortable with the decisions you're making. So that's it. I wanted to just share some advice, some lessons learned, but I'm happy to answer additional questions you might have. That's it. All right. Thank you, guys.